Welcome to your channel on Kabbalistic astrology and the Western mystery tradition. We look forward to guiding you through the upcoming astrological year and hope you find value in these forecasts. As already mentioned in our forecast of 2023, we are now going over the Sun ingress chart in Aries, which marks the beginning of the new astrological or magical year. We take a look at the solar revolution for the US in the upcoming year, too, in order to gain some insights about the most important events and developments from an astrological perspective. We will also take a look at the transits of this chart to the foundation horoscope of the United States. Furthermore, March 2023 is astrologically a very interesting time with Saturn ingress into Pisces, and Pluto also changing sign and moving into Aquarius. We will also take a quick look at that. I would like to mention here that this astrological interpretation in this video corresponds to an approach from a senior member of the Brotherhood of the Eternal Light astrology team and represents a combination of Kabbalistic astrology with traditional techniques, which does not necessarily correspond on all points to the approach in Boel. Let us start with some information about the technique using the Sun ingress in Aries, also called solar revolution. After that, we are going to start directly with the interpretation using Kabbalistic astrology and traditional approaches. The ingress of the Sun in Aries is known as Vernal Equinox. It marks the beginning of the year from an astrological or magical perspective. The year starts appropriately in spring with the cardinal fire sign Aries. So, this is, in terms of astrology, thought of as a moment of particular importance. The chart is drawn for this moment will give us information about the influences in the upcoming year. Here we find a rule used in traditional approaches. The duration of the influence depends mainly on the quality of the ascending sign, according to a well-known rule in medieval and Renaissance astrology. The famous astrologer Guido Bonatti, who based his work on some Arabic masters of the art of astrology, states that with fixed signs, the influence is going to last the entire year. In the case of mutable, or sometimes called common signs, the influence lasts for half a year, and with cardinal or movable signs, it lasts for a quarter of the year, thus for 3 months. With, for example, a mutable sign rising, we then would have to draw a new solar revolution chart for the sun's ingress into Libra. A solar revolution in mundane astrology can, however, be interpreted in a nearly similar manner as in natal astrology. As you may know, in natal astrology, however, a solar chart is drawn differently. The moment of the exact return to the sun's position in the birth horoscope is used here. So, the solar revolution is a traditional technique of global or mundane astrology, the oldest branch of astrology. However, the difference here is the fact that we have to transfer the meanings of the planets, signs, and houses from a personal to a broader global or mundane level. For example, Mercury represents in a birth horoscope the ability to think and communicate, and the exchange of ideas. In addition, the mythological meanings of Mercury, amongst other things, are trading and merchandising. And he is a heavenly messenger moving between heaven and earth. Also, Mercury is a relatively fast moving planet. From this basic symbolism, the meaning we may use for mundane interpretation arouses. Thus, in a mundane chart, we associate Mercury with a nation's communication and telecom industry, trade and commerce, transportation, the literary world, and newspapers or publishers, and the intellectual world of a state in general. Another example, the second house in a birth horoscope shows a person's monetary situation, its wealth. In a mundane chart, on the other hand, the second house provides information about a country's national wealth and revenue, banks, stock exchange, financial institutions, and the money market and alike. Or the eighth house has the traditional meanings of death, inheritance, and the partner's money as the second house from the seventh. And from a Kabbalistic and spiritual point of view, it means the transmission of matter into energy. Thus, in a mundane chart, it shows people who may die, the death rate or mortality of a state, financial relations with allies or enemies. There is another difference between personal and mundane solar charts. The angles, house cusps, and planetary positions in the houses in mundane ingress charts are especially important. This is so since the planetary sign positions are all the same for all ingress charts. Only the cusps and houses are different because of the different time zones all over the planet Earth when the sun ingresses in Aries takes place. You can see this in the example charts for different countries in the world. Thus, we mainly take angles, house cusps, and house placements of the planets into account. Let us now take a closer look at the Sun ingress chart of the US, set up for March 20th, 2023 at 4:24 p.m. in Washington D.C. With mutable signs on the angles, we may expect a general influence of about half a year for this chart, according to the rule mentioned before. The four mutable signs, which are sometimes also called common signs, are each appearing at the endings of a season. This is a time when the season is about to transition into the next season, but it is still in its current modus, for example, from winter to spring. Just as we now have the sun in the sign of Pisces before it enters Aries. It is still cold, but we can see the first flowers showing their heads off the ground. Thus, it is said, the symbolism of the mutable signs is of a dual quality. The season is not different yet, but the new season can be noticed somehow already. So, there is an oscillating effect. Things are going back and forth. From a spiritual and Kabbalistic point of view, we also say that the mutable signs are of a transcending quality since it is a pathway from one condition to another. For our delineation, we can generally state that things are not stable and are moving in a certain direction, but will not settle and may move in another direction before a real change will happen. Things are still in the process and are going through transformation, and they are not yet complete and have not yet made a real change. With Virgo on the ascendant, we have an earth sign with its ruler Mercury. Mercury resides in fiery Aries and is placed directly on the 8th house cusp in conjunction with the sun, thus combusts. What does that mean? As in a natal chart, the ascendant shows the first impressions others have of this person or the self or ego of the native. In a mundane chart, the ascendant shows the country and its impressions and its inhabitants as a whole. So, generally, the overall theme for the country and its inhabitants with the earth sign Virgo here is about earthly things. The earth element is practical oriented and more slowly in its expression. We can also think about food and agriculture and harvesting. It is also about human interaction with the treasures of nature and the use of it in detailed, precise, and well thought out ways, since Virgo is a human sign ruled by Mercury. For Mercury, we already gave the meanings in the sun, in a birth chart showing the basic character of a person. In a mundane chart, it shows the leader or persons with authority, like aristocrats, magistrates, cabinet ministers, and judges. With combustion, the influence of the abstract thinking and smart ideas are limited since they are superimposed by the light of the sun. That is, the men with power. So, the decision may not be based on wise and clever planning of those concerned with solutions based on an intellectual engagement with the issues, but on the interests of those with power. This can lead to problems. Which problems are shown in the chart? Well, the placement on the 8th house cusp could suggest that it is about financial relations with foreign countries, which are based on import and export of food or seeds. Ascendant in Virgo, ruler Mercury in the 8th house cusp. It could also be about life threatening effects, since the eighth house is the house that deals with the topic of death and mortality rates. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, is expecting lower demands of crops, especially seeing that international affairs, more self sufficient communities, war in Ukraine, tension with China, etc., who are our number one importer of American crops, are lessening the demand. Though the projection isn't significant, there is expectation that in 2023, the US will start to see a decline in produce. With the conjunction of Mercury and the Sun, we also have a square to Mars in Gemini in the 10th house. It is generally a nervous kind of energy here, with the versatile and turbulent sign Gemini. The placement in the 10th house could show the house of force and power of the government or people with authority. It could also mean that the rulers of the state have to fight for their reputation. In birth charts, the 10th house is about career, and so we may assign the national trade to the 10th house because it shows the striving of a state. This is interesting since Mercury is also part of this constellation, which is about trade. Can we assume a heavy infliction in the upcoming year in the areas of trade with food products? Mercury, ascendant ruler on the 8th house cusp, and the supply with food in the US, which will lead to problematic or violent consequences? Mars, for the state or government, 10th house. Could it be because of extraordinary heat and drought within the summertime, since combust Mercury is in Aries? It's interesting to note that more and more Americans believe their country is moving towards a more socialist economy and government, which has mixed reviews of who support and who don't. It seems those in power and the wealthy are at a greater loss than those who need social programs to keep up with living expenses, healthcare, jobs, transportation, and quality of life. How will this economic shift shape the coming years domestically and internationally? Let us now look at the transits for our solar revolution chart. On the outside, you see the transiting planets on March the 20th. On the inside, we have provided the foundation chart of the United States for the 4th of July, 1776. We have two challenging aspects here. Firstly, an opposition of transiting Jupiter and Chiron with Saturn. Secondly, a square of the transiting Sun with Jupiter on the foundation chart. Also, the transiting Sun is in close conjunction with Chiron. The second transit reappears in every ingress chart for the vernal equinox, since it is drawn for the very moment the Sun is at 0 degrees Aries, and thus making these aspects regularly every year. With this influence, we have a basic underlying theme for the characterization of the society and politics of the US. The power and basic character, Sun, is closely locked with the greatest wound and at the same time its greatest healing opportunity, Chiron. Also, the identity of the US, the Sun, is in an energetic connection with the moral values and the laws and rule. It's identified that this positions with the recurring theme of trying to be a major influence in the world with the values and attitude guarding the freedom, independence, and one's own power. Since it is a square, the task is of a challenging character which deals with consequences of good and bad results for reputation and interaction. Violations are undertaken and have to be taken, Sun and Chiron, for empowering and advocating the own position and values. The opposition between the transiting Jupiter with Saturn is an interesting aspect, since it is a kind of summit of an important aspect in mundane astrology known as Great Conjunction. The conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which is known in traditional astrology as an influence for the ruler and government of a state, with the opposition, we have contradictory factors. Here we have the immediate impression of moral values and generosity, Jupiter, combined with the mentorship, Chiron, expressed through the direct, fiery, and fierce Aries energy, in opposition to a limiting and binding seriousness, Saturn, which expresses itself in a balancing and harmonious attitude with the more mind related energy of the sign Libra. So, we have a contradiction between finding stabilizing structures, peace and balance in negotiation, and the vouching for one's agenda in an openly direct and more aggressive way. This is fitting with all the conflicts taking place in the world and which the US must deal with on a broader political level. In the US, there are more and more divisions between states regarding human rights issues, with legislation being passed in states such as Texas, Tennessee, Utah, and Florida, among others, limiting healthcare access for birth control, abortions, transgender treatment, and underprivileged population. This has been the center of a lot of debate, and courts are slated to take on cases against these laws. We also see a huge shift towards more radical self acceptance and standing up for fellow humans' rights. Through work education programs focused on equity and inclusion for various minority populations, to understanding and working alongside neurodiverse individuals, formerly labeled as mentally ill or mentally disabled. In this way, education is leading many Americans to embrace and accept other lifestyles and individuals as equally valid. Two more mundane events are generally of great concern in March 2023 and will be an influence for worldly affairs. Saturn has recently changed from Aquarius into Pisces. Thus, the determination of long lasting structures in society, Saturn has undergone a change from striving for unpersonal and new approaches, Aquarius, to an even more idealistic view, Pisces. Saturn has left its domicile in Aquarius, where its expression of responsibility has been supported by the basic sign quality. In Pisces, Saturn's limiting and cautious effect will now express itself more in areas of spiritual and higher ideals. The challenge may lie in the fact that the idealistic and profound ideas that come with Pisces have to fit with reality, and it needs and frames conditions. With the upcoming change of Pluto into Aquarius, we experience again a focus onto ideals of freedom and unpersonal development, which will last for an amount of about 20 years. So, another important change is about to take place with possible innovations and transformation of our life and community. Note, Pluto in its retrograde phase will go back into 27 degrees Capricorn in this year so that it is a phase of transition to the new situation. Also, we can say we are still in a phase of transiting conjunction of Pluto in the foundation chart of the US, which is there on 27 degrees Capricorn. In 2024, Pluto will once again enter Aquarius and move back into Capricorn, but then from November 2024 on, he remains in Aquarius. This is also supported with the previous point of equity and inclusion, and also seeing that more community focused sustainability efforts to maintain local economy and local produce and goods may be a good solution to economic, housing, and food crises in the US. We are seeing more community oriented focus in politics and activism. It will be interesting to see if this will be the remedy for rising division and tension in the US and the world. We are now at the end of our examination of the solar revolution and some other important astrological factors taking place on March 2023 and beyond. We hope you liked the contemplation and gained some insights. Astrology is a fascinating topic. If you want to learn more about it, you may join our astrological community. Links are in the description. Give us a like and leave a comment about your thoughts on the topics explained, and if you would like more of these mundane and global astrological content, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and activate the bell. We wish you all the best for the upcoming astrological year. Take care and hopefully see you soon on the channel. Bye!